Welcome to Fork Around and Find Out, the podcast about building, running, and maintaining software and systems. Hello and welcome to Fork Around and Find Out. I am Justin Garrison, and with me as always is Autumn Nash. How's it going, Autumn?
I'm just waiting for the dad joke that's coming out of this.
Hey, we're just anticipation, okay? We're gonna build up to it right now, right? And today on the show, we have Sean Goedecke, who's gonna talk to us all about a blog post he wrote a little while ago about how he ships products at big tech companies. Welcome to the show, Sean.
Hey, thanks. Great to be here.
I'm not gonna start with dad jokes right now. I do want to get some background here though, because I read this blog article, which, by the way, you are a very prolific writer on your blog, and I love it.
Thank you.
I was like, you are writing almost every day about something, and at least for the history that I scrolled back into, how do you do that?
Well, I think I seem more prolific than I actually am because I have several like drafts on the go at any given time. And usually I'm either not productive or I am productive. And when I am productive, I sort of clear a lot of drafts. So there'll be days where I publish like 2 or even 3 posts, which I think is not a very good idea if you're a blogger and you want to like maintain an audience and get people reading. That's actually too much.
Yeah.
But you know, blogging is not my main thing, so I do it anyway. But there are like weeks where I don't publish anything and I don't do any work. So,
And I mean, RSS feeds exist for a reason, so people should subscribe if they want to keep up at their own pace. But this blog post specifically, I know it made the rounds a little while ago. It was around Hacker News and some other people. How you ship at big tech companies. I don't know if you ever mentioned which tech companies you were talking about, if you're allowed to talk about which companies you were working at. I know Autumn and I both worked at Amazon in the past, so we were at big tech. Autumn is currently at Microsoft, so still big tech. So we've been around. I don't know about, what is your experience with that in the past?
yeah, sure, happy to talk about that. And I think it's really important as well because a lot of I write about this too in other places, but it's really hard to get like representative experience in the tech industry because companies are all so different, and you have to stay at a company a really long time to sort of figure out how things work there. And by the time you've stayed there 5 years, the situation's changed underneath you anyway. So like, I think it's really important to say, you know, here's who I am and where I've worked. And for many engineers, it's not going to be like particularly useful to them at all. But hopefully there's enough people who work in similar kind of big SaaS companies that this kind of resonates. But all that aside, Zendesk and GitHub are my 2 sources of like big tech experience, basically, with about a 5-year stint at both and a little bit of work at like tiny companies in the meantime. But yeah, Autumn, you and I are kind of colleagues, I guess, or almost colleagues.
That's
GitHub
awesome.
is now a Microsoft subsidiary.
It's crazy though, because going just between 2 big tech companies, it's so different. And I feel like where we were 10 years ago or 5 years ago felt so different, you know, like so much has changed. Like I think a few episodes ago, we were talking about the difference between like just that infrastructure has grown in the last 10 to 5 years. And just think about the height of COVID versus now and the tech community. It's wild how much things have changed.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when I joined Zendesk, it was all like virtual machines and microservices and like the rise of Kubernetes, and that's entirely like nobody talks about that now. There's like 3 or 4 kind of cycles that have gone by, and then of course the other thing is that working in tech got real different after about 2021, 2022.
Yeah. Once the interest rate was gone and investment was kind of disappearing, then hiring wasn't paying as well, and then it was about cost savings, and now we've had a lot of people leaving.
But just think about what it was to like, I mean, like, I don't know, like 2015, 2000, and I mean, even 19 and 2022 was like a completely different ball game. You know what I mean? Those 2 were like, and then you see the peak of COVID, and it is wild how far we've fallen. Like every time there's like stuff going on, you're like, is this the new normal? Or, you know, like you never know, like, which is the new normal.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. The cultural expectations and just the culture in general at like the places I've worked at has changed dramatically. Like, and I know it's the same at Zendesk as well. Even though I left there around the start of COVID. My brother works there right now, so I have sort of a
That's awesome.
second row seat to what's going on.
I actually really liked your blog, but I think that's what part that confused me. And it wasn't that you were confusing me, but it was like I think big shipping at a big company and just shipping in different areas of a company are very different, right? Like, so if you're building a button or things for people to interact with, like in a retail setting, that's very different than building a language, right? The process is very different. The kind of the cycle in which you release and what you're releasing and what you're interacting with. Like, it's crazy. Like sometimes you can be doing straight, like adding a feature to a code base, or you can be doing like releasing, or you know what I mean? Like the just you can have two jobs at the same company and it be like night and day skill wise. And then you can be releasing something at a cadence, something huge like an operating system or language, and then that's very different and they're very different from each other. So it's like already in the same company it can be different. In two different companies it's completely different. And then when you think about the fact that there's been so much change, if keeping essentially in your blog post you said shipping is keeping, the people that pay you basically in your leadership happy, but how do we even know what that is now? Like, like
Yeah, very very good points there. Like I want to respond to the first thing you said first, which is that different like teams and different programs of work at large companies operate very differently in almost every single way. Like working on an operating system is very different than like releasing kind of front end changes for a SaaS. I know before we started recording, we were talking about how much Riverside changes. Like the cadence is so fast on that, and
it drives me nuts.
releasing new versions of Windows is sort of the exact opposite. So just to put my cards on the table there, I've worked in kind of SaaS feature stuff my whole career, and some kind of internal infrastructure stuff. Probably the most like fundamental kind of thing was like the Markdown rendering engine on GitHub. I was part of the team that owned that for a little while. So it wasn't exactly like building a button, but it still wasn't kind of working on like the TypeScript language or something like that. But yeah, in terms of how do you know what the people above you want? I think this is a really interesting question. In some ways, this is like the big question, but certainly the more you're working on things that are like central to the company mission, the more you just get told. So when I was working on like at GitHub, for instance, I started out on kind of gists and these kind of features that are really near and dear to my heart, but maybe aren't so like central to the company mission. And it was kind of hard to figure out what the goals were that sort of leadership wanted with that stuff. They sort of just wanted it to like be better and people to like it. It was that level of generality. And then like many people at GitHub, I moved over to the Copilot team, where let me tell you, there was a much clearer mission, and there was a lot more urgency. It was a very different ballgame. And in that environment, figuring out what leadership wants is I think actually pretty easy, because they tell you they are telling you over and over. They're like every meeting and every email and stuff. They're kind of telling you what they want and what projects they care about and what they want to see ship.
Are you allowed to speak about that experience? Like, you don't have to go into detail, but I guess, like, was it fun? Was it, like, I mean, like, what was it like, I guess?
Yeah, I can speak at a pretty high level. Yeah, it was fun. I think it was a really big change. It was almost like, for me, emblematic of the general vibe shift in tech around 2022, 2021. Just this kind of shift from like peacetime to wartime, almost like from working on these systems that kind of these like sleepy systems that see a lot of use and kind of support this functionality that people love, to working on this like brand new thing with this new technology that like is making a lot of money and people are like using a lot and liking a lot and kind of learning as they go. Like it was just, yeah, I don't know. It was fun. It was like it was exhilarating. It was a steep learning curve. I think a steep learning curve, like technically, but mostly like politically and organizationally, kind of the level of coordination that has to happen when you're building something like that. And the as you might expect, the amount of people who have strong opinions is very, very high. Like when you're working on the Markdown pipeline, you're really just dealing with 5 or 6 kind of long tenured, very senior engineers with like strong opinions about this stuff, and it's more like a council of elders kind of situation where you're trying to figure stuff out. Whereas making changes on a product like Copilot is there's people with chief in their job title kind of contributing to the conversation, and people both at GitHub and at Microsoft. It's just a whole different kind of way that like decisions get made.
I love when two like very experienced senior engineers have like, I won't say an argument, but a technical discussion, you know? And it's like it just makes you picture like the Lord of the Rings and like two people in like full wizard stuff and like beards, and like the whole time you're just sitting there with popcorn because you're like, I have thoughts, but I'm not saying them right
Yeah,
now.
yeah. You can say out of some conversations. Totally fine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you just sit there and listen to both. Like sometimes those are better than like college classes, you know? Like you learn so much. You're just
I
like,
used to
"This is
love
wild."
Amazon had the Wednesday ops meeting. Did you ever go to this, Autumn? They were
That's the scariest meeting I've
It's-
ever been in my entire life.
I
I've
would-
not like, bro.
I would
like,
watch those meetings because they're so fabulous. But if people aren't familiar with it, they had the ops reviews that were every Wednesday, and they would spin a wheel. Literally,
Let
it
me
used
tell
to be
you,
a
when
physical
your
wheel.
team's on that wheel,
And, and it was, you know, you would review all the outages from the week before.
well,
and people
first
would
tell,
talk
tell
about
them
it.
tell them about the fact that you hold your breath the whole wheel turn, like, and
Yeah.
everybody is sitting there holding their breath because
Yeah.
what you're holding.
Not us.
Yeah. What you're doing is that wheel, because it's usually like builders tools or like a bunch of orgs, right? But it's a weekly ops of like all the like important AWS services. So they're spinning this wheel to figure out who is going to present their COEs, because you don't have enough time to do everybody's. So everybody brings like,
Everyone
their
had
most-
outages. And
Yeah, everybody brings their most important COEs, and then it's like, but I love what it's supposed to be about. It's not always that, but it's supposed to be about everybody bringing like your what is the acronym for COE? It's
something of excellence or
It- no, it's not excellence. Something outage. What? No, something outage. Anyways, but it's supposed to be everybody bringing your stories
correction
and-
of error.
Yes, correction of error. And in theory, it's actually a good model. And like, you know, like I give Amazon their stuff when they deserve it. But you bring you write a paper. So after the outage, you write a paper and you're like, what could we have done better? And it's supposed to be no blame in the kind of way of like, yes, this dude pressed a button, but if there was a button that can bring down a tier 1 system, we fucked up because it was
That
the
button shouldn't exist.
right?
Yeah, it's not.
So
yeah.
like, I love that part when you see like the most just genius people sitting there talking about just building something, which goes back to what your blog was about, shipping something, right? Building something at a certain scale is so different than adding a feature, which you can be adding that feature at scale. That's another thing too, right? Like, but that is scary. Like, what if you put a button somewhere and they hate your button, or what if it breaks stuff? You know what I mean? So,
And I mean, as a slight tangent from this, I do think that meeting specifically is like a key to Amazon's operational excellence.
no, they do
because
a lot of things wrong, but they do a lot they do
that
right.
process specifically, because everyone can see it. There are VP level people on that call talking about operations stuff, and you just learn so much stuff passively by watching. Hey, we're designing this new thing. Here's how this is going to look. And someone's like, have you thought about this side of authentication? Have you thought
It is
about
a
this
master
caching?
class at learning
Fantastic.
at scale.
And it was a huge time sink every Wednesday for 3 hours or something like that. And it was
Like
like
an hour and a half.
Yeah, it was. Did they ever go hour and a half? I don't know.
It felt no, because
yeah.
the two principals start
Yeah.
arguing, and look, there's a lot of meetings that you drop after 10 minutes over. You don't drop that
No.
meeting. You're sitting there
No.
with popcorn.
Yeah,
You're
no,
like,
it's fantastic.
who's gonna
I would
win?
just put
It
that
is-
one on in the background. I'm gonna do some work and I'm gonna pay
It
attention.
doesn't
to this,
matter
yeah.
what you're doing. Like
Yeah.
that's the
No,
one meeting I
great
want to
meeting.
show up for,
Yeah.
because like you learn so much. You see some really smart people that nobody else would ever argue with each other, which is great. Like
Yeah.
it's like reality
Just
TV.
the open argument of like,
yeah,
hey,
but
we're
not a bad way.
Yeah, no. We're not
It's
seeing
like-
who's right, who's wrong.
Yeah.
We're coming to the best conclusion.
But dude, you learn so much because they both have, nobody doesn't have a valid argument in this. You know what I mean? Like both of them
Everyone
have
had a good experience.
amazing, yes,
But
and
the
it was great.
the thing I was actually trying to get to with that was
Side
Sean,
quest.
Yeah, it was a side quest. But Sean, the thing that I've told a lot of people over my career of like, hey, I want to get into tech, I want to do something new, I want to go somewhere else. I always told them, go to the thing that either is the closest to making money or has the most attention. Because both of those things are where people will just know that you're doing work. Because a lot of the infrastructure, I love infrastructure. It is not the best career path for growing if you want to be, you know, like a top level VP or something like that, because most companies just don't have an infrastructure engineer at that level. It's not something that's visible. It's not part of the shipping culture or the thing that even makes it into like a shareholder meeting. Like, hey, we
Also,
deployed another Kubernetes cluster. Nobody cares, right?
DevOps, infrastructure, SREs, they are called when something's wrong. When you've messed up and it's all out, they call you, but nobody notices when you did a good job.
I mean, some companies really praise the firefighter,
I
right?
think
Like,
they
but that's not we're not like promoting to have more of it.
but also like that's tricky too, because like in a way like there shouldn't be fires, right? Like I mean they are always going to be fires to an extent, but then that gets out of hand because it's like then you're constantly chasing fires and there's not enough time to make to fix those corrections before they become fires.
But a
So
lot
then
of
that becomes like a whole nother conversation.
every group that I've worked for had the one person that would just swoop in and fix something, right? You're just like, hey, we do not know what's going on.
Everybody has a
And
Batman.
they would debug it further than anyone else, and they would find the actual root cause. And like, oh, here's the one line change that fixes that whole problem. Right? It's just like, oh, that was amazing. How'd you do that?
There's always one senior, and for some reason they're a senior, right? Because like the principals, they know everything in their depth area usually.
Yeah.
There's one senior who like they've touched everything and they can fix anything, and everybody on the team can take it so far. And when you're absolutely up shit's creek, you call that person.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like one of the reasons that kind of archetype is more commonly found in like senior than principal, and of course these levels are kind of different between companies. At GitHub, there are a lot of staff engineers that would fit that as well. Is that like you have to be really familiar with the specifics of the code to figure this stuff out. And the more senior you get, sometimes the more you kind of get into this realm of like generalities where you like maybe you don't quite remember exactly like line by line how this thing works anymore, because you're dealing with other stuff as well.
I also think
that-
that at that like the principal level is the first one that stops solving problems with technology. Right?
Yeah.
We're like really like, this is a process problem. I'm not going to write a line of code to solve
I
this.
don't know if that's always true, but it's a higher level.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's a higher like view of the technological problems usually. But it also depends, because like if you're deep in Java land, right? Like each principal is part of like a project and maintainer for a project, right? Like so I think it depends, but it also what you mentioned. So like it's interesting because do they usually have staff and senior in the same like I guess tree or like pyramid, I guess? Because what is the difference between staff and senior usually?
I
Is
mean,
it
the
usually, like-
Amazon tree was senior principal and then senior principal, right? Because L7,
Oh,
L6,
okay.
7, 8.
So principal at Amazon is kind of similar to staff then in my mind.
But it's weird
I think
because
so.
isn't architect at Microsoft above a principal, or is that the same?
Microsoft
Or
has
do
like
they-
150 levels.
I don't,
Yeah,
the
they're
Microsoft
different
org
levels.
chart is terrifying to me.
But then like what is like GitHub? Is GitHub different because GitHub was technically a company beforehand?
Yeah, I mean, GitHub goes, well, I think it's maybe changing now, but like from my memory, like most of the time I've been here, it's like mid-level, senior, staff, principal. That's it.
Oh, that makes sense.
And then at Zendesk, it was like senior staff, distinguished senior staff, and then
See, because it seems like a lot of companies just trade staff and senior, like so if they don't have a senior, they have a staff, but some of them will actually tier it. And I'm like, well, which one comes first, I guess?
Yeah.
Not that it really matters,
no,
but
staff is always above senior in the places I've seen. But like, I wouldn't be surprised if some people do it differently. Like,
Yeah. Back to the shipping topic. We mentioned like Autumn, you were shipping Java at Amazon. I was shipping with Kubernetes, like very different things, but a lot of the process still kind of felt the same to me. Like everyone was trying to ship for reInvent at Amazon, right? Like
when you work for DevRail, did they let you actually ship things to production?
I only wrote one line of code or one section of code that ever ended up in any production system. It took me a week to learn the internal tooling to make that happen.
It is a
terrible.
thing.
But a whole bunch of like external, like public facing stuff that was used by customers in various situations, but not internal Amazon systems. I wanted to stay far away from that as possible.
Rough.
But a lot of the stuff I felt like even across the different orgs of Amazon's different products, a lot of the shipping still felt kind of the same, where we're pushing software. Once a customer gets it, we like then interact with them. Amazon shipping bar was always pretty low. We got things out that were pretty terrible to get them in customers' hands as early as possible, and then we iterated on them over years. My experience at Disney was the exact opposite, especially Disney Animation, where we shipped what I call box software. Like shipping movies is just such a it's a box software sort of experience where literally I would see my software on a shelf in at Target, right? It's part of a Java interpreter that's on the DVD or something like that, but it's not the actual like software that I maintained. And then it wasn't until I was maintaining software, I think that everything you say in what is shipping became a lot less clear once we had a SaaS, once we had to maintain something after it was shipped, right? You ship something and now maintenance starts. With Disney shipping movies, once I shipped something, I was done with it. And it was fantastic because everyone knew, hey, we're all done with this thing now. We move on to the next thing. And I felt like that was a big difference in my career and just knowing box software from the past. Like people were like, I'm done with Office 97, so I don't have to touch that one anymore. But everything always like it was very clear when the thing had shipped. And now, as you point out, it's very unclear when something has shipped.
Yeah, well, that's like that's as you say, that's true of like SaaS software in general. I mean, when is Copilot shipped? When is like GitHub shipped? Like GitHub is a product, but each feature within GitHub has the same thing. Like when a pull request shipped, when a pull request reviews shipped, like all of these things are constantly being worked on. All of these things are constantly changing. And I've seen lots of engineers take their feature and kind of get trapped by that almost of this idea that like, well, it isn't done yet. There's more things we could do. There's always more things we could do, and working on it like long past the point where there's any enthusiasm from leadership for them to continue.
How do you think attaching versions to things you ship affects this? Because I feel like there's a difference there.
It's horrible. It makes it just, oh my God, Java 8 will live till like the universe is nuked forever.
Yeah, I mean like versions of like libraries and extensions and things where someone could be running the old version years and years after you ship. Is that what you mean?
Just in general, like in a SaaS, people shouldn't care about the version, right? It's just like I go to riverside.fm and I use the interface. I have no idea what internal version this is called. But for products that I'm supposed to build on, I need these defining lines of like, oh, that's version 8, that's version 9. I can't move to version 9 until I change these things, right? Like you can have breaking changes, you can do things to be able to do that. But I also feel like internally at companies, they use version numbers as a way to say they ship something. Right? Like we shipped version Java 8.1. It's like, what does that mean? They're like, I don't know. I just arbitrarily made it up so I could say I shipped something.
But but a lot of people do not arbitrarily make that up though. Like, and I don't mean just Java. Like, I mean like there are huge debates on like epochs and just all kind of things in different languages. Plus, like the lower level you get, like dependencies are such a big deal.
Yeah.
Like I think that like when you get to do like a certain level of programming, it's like you just get to like a huge respect for how many dependencies you can pull in to have like a stable release, because like you are going to pay a great deal for each new one, you know?
Yeah, for sure. But like, it's funny, like at sort of one end of the spectrum, you have like versioning is like technically really hard, but philosophically really easy because you're just doing semantic versioning, and there's pretty clear like
you know how to count
principles for like, is this a breaking change? Does this change the interface? You can determine that like almost purely programmatically, and then the further you get up the other end of the spectrum, versioning becomes like technically pretty easy. You know, like you can call something whatever version you want, and it's not, your dependency problem isn't as bad between like, I don't know, like I don't know, I don't actually have a good example, but the philosophical problem of like, is this something new? Is this a new version? You know, like to what extent is calling this a new version a marketing decision? That stuff gets really murky because like what is a product, right? A product is a thing that is marketed. It's a thing that is sold. You know, it's not primarily a technical thing. So to like a lot of engineers kind of come into this problem and they say, well, it's technically the same, so like it's stupid to give this a new version. And it's like, well, no, like the technical thing is sort of incidental. Like what you're working on is a product in the market.
It also depends on if you're versioning or you're having to update is dependent on other people and like on the dependencies, or if you get a CVE, or if you have to patch something. But I also think something that you said was really interesting is that I think there are some people who are very good at solving technical problems, but they don't have a mind for the business side, and they don't see how business affects engineering. And then there's some people who are good technically, but they have that other skill of being able to see where technology fits into business and being a product. And I think that we should almost, at least in certain realms, give that a little bit more credit, because being able to understand the business needs
I
and
mean,
how that marries technically is really important.
like that's a product manager, right? Like that's the role of the product manager,
Well,
that bridge in between.
see, I
Ew, Justin, who
I
said
I'm
disagree.
just
I
that?
disagree. I think
all
that's
right.
the I think that's the
No.
role of a of an engineer. This is the thing I say that I think makes people angry the most. But it's a thing I believe, which is that if you are working in a tech company, if you're not working on your own project, engineering is in service of business needs. Engineering is a tool in service of the needs of the business always. That is just what it is.
I think
That's
that's how
what you're
you're an
being paid to
effective
do.
engineer. You're a good engineer when you understand the business needs, because you can't make the right decisions if you don't understand the business needs. If you don't understand, like, there's got to be more effort, especially now that Copilot or just any AI is going to do more for us. Like, understanding how someone's going to use this, understanding the restraints that that person may have using your product. Like, I think that's the good, like, that's what makes you special versus somebody who's just going to like write a bunch of code, to me.
Now, I guess the one thing I would push back on is most of the time that I've seen at companies, engineers don't have the information they need to make good business decisions, right? Like at Disney, I was never told how much money something costs, and it's just like, oh yeah, you just here's your task list. Like it gets filtered down under 8 layers of management or something. It's like, okay, here's the 5 tasks I need to do. I can't affect how the business is going to change for that, and if I did, or the times I tried, I was in trouble because I stepped out of my lane and I was doing something I shouldn't have been doing. Amazon was a little bit different, where at least on
Did you
the
get
product,
weekly business reviews?
yeah, the weekly business reviews was exactly the thing that I never got at Disney. Where my very first meeting, I showed up and they was like, "Here's how much money EKS made last week," and I was like, "I think I'm in the wrong meeting." I'm like, "No, no, this is just a weekly business review." I'm like, "What are you talking about? Like, guys, you don't tell everyone all of the money numbers." They're like, "Well, then how else are you gonna make a decision?"
I think that's one of the things that makes Amazon successful is the fact that they make everybody show up to those meetings, from essays to product to like, because everybody needs that understanding to be able to be good at your job. And it also holds you accountable, because when you keep saying something's green and then it goes yellow and it goes red and you're all in that meeting, you've got to be able to explain that.
I think I want to press on something a little bit, which is that when I say that like engineering is in service of business needs, I'm not necessarily saying that engineers should be out there making business decisions and out there making business bets. I think sometimes that's appropriate in some companies, but let me give you a hypothetical. And by hypothetical, I mean something that I've seen about 100,000 times, which is like there's this project happening. Your manager comes in and says like, hey, like we really need this endpoint, this feature, this button to do these like 3 more things. And the engineer comes back and says like, no, we can't actually do that. We have to put that in a background job. It's going to have to, the interface is going to have to be different. Customers are going to have to poll this API instead of just getting it back immediately, because otherwise it's going to push the endpoint over 200 milliseconds, and an endpoint over 200 milliseconds is unacceptably slow. Is it like, is that engineer right or wrong, right? Like, is it, and my perspective and the thing that I think is kind of controversial is that I think the engineer is 100% in the wrong there. That it's just incorrect to say, actually, it's more important to ship like a fast, efficient API than it is to like deliver this kind of business need. And of course, there's like room to push back. And of course, there's situations where like a 200 millisecond endpoint is going to have knock-on effects on the rest of the infrastructure and cause problems that are hard to anticipate and so on. But I've seen over and over again, just in the simple case, engineers saying like, on moral grounds, like I refuse to ship this. And when I say moral grounds, I mean like aesthetic grounds. Like this is going to be too slow. This is going to be too janky. Like I'm not going to ship this, and just leaving so much value on the table. I'm like just not shipping things that customers want. Like, And I think that dynamic can happen even when like almost no matter how much business context you have, because it's just a matter of like the engineer not listening to what they're being told.
I not only agree with you, but I'll take it one step further. This is why we get contention. As someone who's been a solutions architect, an engineer, a product manager, and then an engineer again, we don't all respect each other's jobs because we think that we all don't do anything, right? And I think a lot of times engineers can be like, but I do all this work and product managers don't do anything. But like you all need each other to break the right ecosystem, right? Like you said, I don't think that they need to make crazy business decisions. Maybe if you work in a startup or, certain areas, maybe. But there's certain technical decisions that you can't make and you can't make well and you can't prioritize and do things effectively without knowing why you're making that feature. And like sometimes a product manager could, if they're not very technical, they could be like, hey, they could be promising something that's impossible, right? But an engineer could be okay, I'm gonna be real. Sometimes engineers we get a little like you do too many of the hard things and then all of a sudden you feel a little goddish and like they'll be out there just digging in for things that you don't need to dig in for. Like sometimes it's art for art's sake of I just want to build this really cool thing because it's hard, but your customers don't want that shit. Like nobody wants it. Nobody asked you for that. Like, and if you don't have a good balance between like this is the right technical decision because it's going to make our customers' lives better, you're just building for stuff, but like this is a business also, like it has to make money and people need to like it to a certain extent, which I think like it's just like an ecosystem. It all has to balance a certain amount and we all need to understand where we're all going. It's like planning a trip, but you don't know where you're supposed to end up. Like
I agree, Auden, but people get really upset when you say that.
I know. I also
People
make
people
people
really don't like
mad. We're
hearing
gonna
it.
be friends, Sean. Like me and you, like we're right here. Like,
The one thing that I would push back on is sometimes the person asking for the request or the customer asking for it don't know the constraints and necessarily how much work that's going to take, what risks that's going to have to something else that's happening on the back
100%.
end, or the person they're asking isn't given the ability to do that, right? Like I need you to change this button. It's like, but that's someone else's service and I can't change their code, right? Depending on the dynamics, the politics, whatever the reason, I can't change how they set up their service. So I'm constrained on their 2 nines of availability and their 40 millisecond ping. So I could tell you I could do it this way, but I can't because I don't have the ability to do that. And then at some point you do have to just push back and say, this isn't possible. If you want this, if the customer wants this bad, then you need to take that up the chain and go figure out how that works. Because
but I don't think anybody's ever said that engineers need to be like beholden to somebody asking for stuff. They just need to understand why they're asking for it. Because 100%, especially when you're dealing with managed services, people think that you just do some kind of crazy magic in a hat somewhere, and you're like, bro, no. Like, there's real things under it with real constraints, and like sometimes you're building things that have never been built before. So like you don't even like you end up finding out these weird edge cases of how somebody used something completely wrong. Like for instance, when they took down, was it Kong, the search engine? But they took it down with like the number of connections to that like database. You know what
what
I
was that,
mean? Like
perplexity?
sometimes
Yeah.
you don't even know what the constraints of that is until you learn them the hard way, right? Because it's a new thing that you've never done before and it's at scale. But what I think we mess up with, like I think 100% you should be able to push back because like they don't even, but sometimes after being an SA and especially like a specialist SA, it's like a lot of pressure because they use your product more than you do. And you are now the person that's being called in after they've hit customer service everywhere else, after a team's looked at it, they've called the senior engineer, like the whole team is mad at you. Okay. They want to know why this doesn't work. And I'm gonna be real, sometimes like when you start off as a generalist essay and you have to ask a lot of questions and then you get to be a specialist, right? And you learn that customers don't always know what they want. You have to this very like this dance of a relationship of where you have to ask them questions to get the information because they'll be like, I use this thing and I love it. And I'm like, do you love it? Like, tell me about it. Like, like they'll be like, I use Cassandra and we're really good at it. So we don't need a managed database. And I'm just like, lies. Why are you here then? You know what I mean? Like, how many times are you being paged at 3 a.m.? How many times have you like lost a node? Like, sometimes customers do not know what they need, and you have to be able to ask the right questions. And I think that's almost a skill in itself, of being able to figure out, does this really actually work for you? Can I help you find something that's better for you? Maybe you don't need this button, maybe you need a retry. It's a whole dance of how that goes about.
I feel like I want to chime on the podcast anytime someone says that someone's forking around or finding out. Uh,
Dude,
it tends to happen.
I want like a sticker, a chime. I want like, I want you to say, like, I want you to do like one of those like sound bites so I can just play it at people. Like, I want a beanbag that I can throw it at people when they do stuff that's dumb. Cause like, have you seen the world lately? I'm just like, what are you doing? Stop it.
uh, going back into your post, Sean, about one of the sections you call out here is communication, and I love that this is part of shipping, because it's something that I don't think a lot of people outside the industry have had the privilege of being a part of, and a lot of people don't understand like what it's all about. And you say the maintaining trust is the top priority, which I absolutely agree with, and I think that's a good way of summarizing it, because the main thing that I remember shipping that was like a big high pressure launch was Disney Plus, and we were like, Disney Plus was going live. We know it was going live. We were rolling it out across the world. It was only in like a few regions or whatever at first, but there was just like the people running that whole thing was just like, here's where we're at. Here's what we're doing. Here's why this is going to be delayed. And then day of, it's like, here's the Slack channel. Join the Slack channel. Everybody watch. We're just going to announce everything we're doing one by one. And it was fantastic just to see everything you basically call it in this blog. It was like, hey, if something goes wrong and you haven't thought about it, then that's on you for not being trustworthy, right? Like all of these contingencies need to be kind of thought of. And it was also the first time that I realized how much better the internal systems at Google were than Apple's. Just because
I love that you find any opportunity to throw
I was
shade.
blown away by this, because we submitted like the app had already been submitted, it was already approved, and we're like, hey, we are going live, and both systems have like this, and again, this is back in 2018, so I'm sure a lot's changed, but like there's a button to like, okay, make this live now, and like they're like, we push Google's go live button, like literally sentence like, we push Google's go live button, we push Apple's go live button, Google's live, and I'm like, wait a minute, like how did it's just like worldwide? It's the app's available. How do they do that? I was like, okay. They're like, it showed up on Chromecast first for some reason. It's like, oh yeah, it's on Chromecast. It's here. And like, okay, when's Apple going live? Like, it usually takes about 4 hours. They're like, it's like this rsync process that's like texting, like sending text files around the world. I'm like, what is going on here with Apple? It was just fantastic. It was just like, okay, this is a little different.
I would love to know why though.
Yeah, it was fascinating, just because it's like, Google built these global systems that had all of these benefits of like, this is how this is supposed to work, and everyone else kind of caught up to it at some point, but the
Apple
whole communication
also puts things in review though, like Apple will leave you
Oh
on
no,
red.
this was like post review, like
Oh, okay.
Disney Plus apps were there, they were approved. We're just like, because you can hold them, you could say like,
Oh,
hey,
that's
I want it
interesting.
approved,
Okay.
but I don't want it to be available yet, and so you
Yeah.
could, because you can do like test flight and all that stuff too.
Okay, sorry, Apple. I can't have your back on that one. I tried to help you out. I don't know. What
No, yeah,
happened.
the apps were definitely already done, reviewed, and ready to go for like weeks beforehand.
But yeah,
but just the communication.
Yeah, about communication, I want to kind of like emphasize that, because I think people hear communication is like top priority and communication is priority number one, and they sort of nod and go, yeah, it's really important. I don't mean that it's really important. I mean that it's top priority. It is more important to communicate about the project than it is to ship the project on time. It is more important to communicate about the project than it is to ship the project without bugs. Like, communication is the most important thing when you're shipping a project. Like,
and
bar none.
The other side of that was being part of the Kubernetes release team,
Yeah.
right? Because Kubernetes is this big project that's a bunch of volunteers that are all like running around trying to get stuff in at the last minute sort of thing. And all of it is communication. Everything about shipping Kubernetes is like, okay.
Kubernetes is great at communication and structure, though. That is one of the most well-structured open source projects.
Because it's clearly defined. Like everyone's
It's
role
so
is
clear,
clearly,
though.
yeah.
And there's teams and there's projects and
there's shadows and there's everyone else to train them up into that and all that stuff.
But also the way that, so like Java has one big just umbrella of open source, right? And then Linux has got all these little things everywhere. Kubernetes does really well at having like multiple maintainers and projects that all work and do their own thing, but have this great umbrella that keeps it all together. So they're both independent, but it's kind of got one thing to house it all. But also, like, can you go more into the communication aspect and tell us, like, because people might not have read your blog. Like, can you tell us what you really mean about that communication? Because this is something that I think, like, first of all, earning trust and keeping that trust is super important. And I think that people don't. This is like people talk about how to be technical, but there's so many parts of the process and just the other parts of engineering that nobody talks about and tells you. And I think we can really lack those skills that make you a whole engineer. So can you talk more about that and like tell people kind of what you meant in the blog and like what you said and like elaborate?
Yeah, for sure. So the the core of it, like the reason why communication is so central and so much more central than even like the actual thing that you are shipping, is that like at a large company, like shipping something is almost defined by communication. Like it's something is shipped when people know about it. It's shipped when your management chain like is happy with it. It's like whether something is shipped, it's that's defined by the flow of information inside the org more than it's defined by what is like literally
Yeah,
available in terms
get
of
push
software.
doesn't count.
Yeah, Git push doesn't ship. Like announcements ship, telling people about it ship. Putting something up where people can like go and find it and then they actually find it like that. That's like
Also, that's so much
that's the shit.
pressure when you have to have the good announcement. Like, you can be great at writing code, but having to say something that millions of people are going to read and make sure you don't say something stupid is so much pressure.
Well, fortunately, at least in my experience, the announcement side of things has been handled by like a full marketing arm and a whole team of people kind of who have to worry about that. So I don't, which is really nice. But the other thing about communication, like that, the part that's sort of more internal, is that when you're like leading a project, you sort of live and die on trust. And when I say trust, there's all kinds of trust, but I specifically mean the extent to which your manager and your manager's manager trust you to do like sensible things with the project, which is partially to like get it out on time, but also like not to go rogue and like do something really weird, not to do something really like completely unaccountable. Like that's a worry that I think a lot of engineering managers have, that like engineers kind of, not to put too far, like almost like just can't be trusted is what I want to say, which is an awkward way of putting it. But
I mean, I think can't be trusted with what they need, right? What the manager needs, what the business needs. An engineer wants to do engineering things and not necessarily satisfy customers. And I can totally
Yeah.
see.
I love how everybody talks about engineers like pharaoh chaos goblins that just sit in a room somewhere and like write code, and like they're not completely off.
I don't see that.
Like they're like, you want to argue, but you're like, nah. I mean,
I do think like, yeah, I do talk like that, but sort of to the extent that
it's
I
not
do, it's
just
because
you. Think about the memes of like they're just dark. They're like they sit in dark rooms and you just throw pizzas in and nobody shout. Like that's been the attitude. Like people act just that's the people's idea of what an engineer is.
But I mean, I'm an engineer, right? Like I've been an engineer my whole career. Like I love engineers. I am one, and I think like the extent to which I kind of give engineers a hard time is because like engineers already know that it's important to do things technically well. They already know that it's important to like, write code properly and factor their app appropriately and blah blah blah. Like this stuff that I talk about, this is the part that I think a lot of engineers don't know. So if you just listen to that in isolation, it probably sounds like I have a very negative opinion about how engineers function. But it's not true. It's not true. I love them.
I mean, I don't think that's a bad thing. We are kind of chaos goblins. We own that. Like, but I think that I hope there are more people like you that become more senior and that like are staff or leads, because I think, again, like you just said, we know the technical things are important, but there's so much more to being an engineer than writing code. And I hope that we continue to make better, more well-rounded engineers and not just people that are deeply technical but have no people skills or process skills or these kind of skills that are deeply important to the process.
For sure. As long as the technical part is also there, like you actually do have to be technical. Like that. That is actually a hard
But we've
requirement
never
as
let
well.
anybody forget that part.
Yeah, true.
Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
I think people are always like overly compensating in that area, while being like horrible at all the other things.
I mean, I don't know. I think the vibe has changed on people thinking they can do more than they actually can because
You think
of
so?
things like AI, and look at all this stuff that I can do without actually having the knowledge of how it works or experience. I mean, and this isn't maybe big enterprise, this isn't like large things, but just in general, I feel like a lot of the shift of, and I don't want to gatekeep engineering. Like I think they are doing engineering, but like they think they're God a lot sooner than when they actually like might be praised at a larger company of saying like, oh, you actually are doing like a really good thing here.
Dude, I'm a woman in tech. They've all thought they were God forever.
Sure.
Like they
Uh,
just they're like it's amazing. Like some people have deep imposter syndrome, and some people you're like, bro, you could use some imposter syndrome.
Yeah, I mean, like when I give people advice about how to lead projects, I do try to suggest that if they can find some way to foster an unreasonable confidence within themselves, they should do it, because it really does help to like have this almost unjustified self-belief that you will figure out a way to make it work. Like it can be tough to interact with, I know, but
Hey, being an optimist is helpful, right? Like
I
just
actually
in
think
general.
that's important in some people, because I feel like you meet these people and they're so smart and they're so good at it, but they're never the people that think that they have like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
they're the people where you're like, dude, if you have imposter syndrome, I'm screwed. Like, you know what I mean? Like, but then there's always that like those people who have like the God complex, and you're like, you could use like a
something you didn't call out in your communication that has at least been my experience in gaining trust with leadership is literally just sitting next to them in person, in common, like there's no faster way to gain someone's trust than just like going to lunch with them a few times, and like at least if you're confident, if you portray some confidence, right? If you're saying I don't know how this is going and you're always worried about it, maybe not so. But I've seen people succeed just because they went into the office, and that's where leadership was, right? They were just in the same even location, right? Like if everyone was in an office, but the person shipping a product was in a different building, they didn't gain the trust because they weren't seen by leadership constantly, and they're like, I don't know what they're doing because I haven't talked to them for 4 days. Versus you pass them in the hallways. Hey, how's it going? Oh, it's going great. We're going to ship it next week, right? Like that sort of confidence building and trust. I don't like it, but I know that humans in general are that way, and in just having that constant sort of like interaction with people, like the small casual things, gains a lot of trust really fast.
I think it's possible to do remotely too, though.
I think it's possible to do remotely, but to some extent that could just be cope, because I've been remote for like 8 years and my whole time at GitHub has been remote, and I like to think I've built some trust there.
I think being a personable person and having people skills can assist in gaining that, but you have to be good at like finding a way to like have water cooler talk, not at the water cooler, right?
I think if everyone's remote, it's possible, and everyone can be on the same footing. I think if you're hybrid or your leadership is in an office and you're remote, you're not going to gain the same amount of trust. You're not going to get that. You can build trust over time. It's going to be harder than if you were showing up into an office.
Look, that's true. There are all these like social human ways of building trust, but I do think like the fundamental way of building trust is to like just straightforwardly do the thing and demonstrate that you are worthy of trust, and that you can,
reputation
and
is
that
the
you can do
best.
things.
Yeah.
Like it's a flywheel, right? Like you have a little trust, you get put on a little project, you do a good job, you get put on bigger projects, and then at some point it's like, well, you know, this person did these last things really well. Like, yeah, we trust them to do a good job of this thing. It's just this kind of like,
yeah,
I think delivering results is how you build trust.
Yeah. Where
just
results is to be understood as your manager and their manager are happy with how the project went.
yeah, yeah, making them aware of something that you did and how it went.
How do you? Oh, that's another thing. I think communication is not always thought as like you have to be good at giving people the information to know why things are happening and to show your success, because you can be doing the best job ever, but if you don't learn how to market yourself and to show up and to like communicate that, that's very detrimental to your career. Do you have any advice for managers though? Because I do think that generally we all want to please our boss and have them happy with us. That's pretty much like overall, that's not rocket science, but like how do we help managers to give us that information of what is important to leadership and to these projects and to the value that they need?
Yeah, that's a good question. My main piece of advice is really simple. It's just ask. It's like if you're a engineer, like in your one-on-one, be like, hey, what's important to management right now? And if your manager doesn't know, ask them to go and ask. And I think I'm sure these exist, but I've never worked in a place where a manager couldn't go to their manager and say, hey, what are the top priorities right now? What are you most worried about? That's always been a question that's like appropriate to ask. And you can just kind of do that up the chain. And then, in your next one-on-one or just async later, just hear, oh yeah, I talked to the VP and they said like they were worried about these three things. So like, yeah, the main thing is just like it's this stuff is not covert at large organizations in my experience. People don't like hide what they want. Like they're trying to tell people what they want because they want it to happen. VPs are constantly sending emails and stuff. It's just because these different levels communicate in different ways. Like it can be hard for the information to get through. You can read an email written by a VP and it just sounds like corporate speak, just sounds like noise. But if you actually read it and pay attention to it, they will usually be telling you like what three things they care about, and by omission what things they don't care about.
I only have had two managers that ever told me something and then went behind my back and told other people something else, where it was like actually they were literally lying to my face to have me do something that was not what they wanted.
Oh, look, there are so many dysfunctional situations out there. I have nothing but sympathy, and I have no advice for people in those situations. I feel for you.
My advice is to get away from that manager as fast as possible.
Yeah.
I had so many snarky things in my head that I'm just not gonna say. Like,
it's fine. It's a safe space. It's just us three. No one else is gonna hear this.
lies. But Sean's face was so good. Like I was just like,
Yeah.
Sean has stories.
Yeah. Sean knows.
Yeah, I'm limited in what I can say, but I can make general statements pretty freely.
The last thing in your blog post that I want to talk about was this notion of can we ship right now? And I like that sort of like boiling it down of like, hey, is this good enough? Is this something that we could just put out there? Is this something that's because the longer you say no, the longer you hold on to something, the harder it's going to be to get out the door later, right?
Yeah, and that's certainly true from like a product perspective. But I even mean that technically. Like, can we literally ship right now? Are we technically ready to ship right now? Is enough of the code in place that we could push a deploy or turn the feature flag on and ship? Like, what's preventing us from doing that? I think people when they run projects a lot, they sort of assume that writing the code is the hard part and like getting it out is easy. But in fact, writing the code is pretty easy, and integrating everything and making sure it works end to end and fixing the kind of communication layer, edge cases, and all of that stuff. That stuff, in my experience, is what's really hard about projects. So if you can front load that work as much as possible by like if you have to ship a new page with a bunch of stuff on it, if you can like ship to staff only a version of the page that has no styling and is just like a page, then like the more of that stuff you can do, the more you kind of defray these potential risks about not being able to ship eventually. And I've seen projects fail where people were just like, they assumed that they could, push this certain thing to production. So they had this big, long development branch that looked really good and worked really good locally. Then when they went to deploy it, it was like, oh, it actually works slightly differently. And this core assumption that you had about how things would work is false. So you have to go and back to the drawing board on launch day and figure out how to make this work. Like,
and the thing that I really like about this is how it ties into the first part that we talked about, where shipping is when your leadership thinks it's shipped, right? And if you get pushed, that's not shipping. And even if the code is ready, even if you say the code is complete today, I have all the tests, I verify that this thing will work. If your marketing team's not ready, if you don't have the blog post that announces it, if you don't have training material or documentation or whatever post-launch activities ready to go, you're not ready to ship, even if the code is complete. And so making sure that stuff is done ahead of time so that it's not a, hey, we pushed the button to get, we get pushed, now it's on you to finish shipping. It's like, no, you have to do that together. That is something that has to be done together, because leadership isn't seeing the get push and they're seeing the post activities. And you need to make sure that those can happen, not necessarily at the same time, but in some cadence that's together. So you can say, hey, this is done on this Friday, because everyone always should ship on a Friday. And and whenever that case may be, you say like, now the leadership knows it's out there because the blog post went live. Because when Disney Plus went live, it was live for like 6 hours before the actual announcement went live. And it's like, guess what? It wasn't live for those 6 hours. People found it. People were literally already watching shows on it. We're like, no, it's not shipped yet. This is not done because we haven't made the announcement.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And like, as an engineer, you're not always in control over that stuff. Like, you're not always the one pushing the button. But you definitely have to be aware that like it's not going to be over until that stuff is done. And to the extent that like you're blocking that stuff for reasons that might seem unimportant to you, they will become very important on launch day.
Yeah. Oh, Autumn, did you ever have things at Amazon that didn't ship because documentation wasn't ready? I can't tell you how many.
I was definitely the junior engineer that was like, the code's done, it's out there, and they're like, go write the release announcement. I was like, damn it.
Yeah.
I don't want to do this.
I had lots of things that did not ship on time.
I have blogs that are still in like that were still
draft form.
No, they were drafted. I have blogs that had been in review for like 2 years. They'll never see the light of day. They're dead now.
Yeah.
I mean, a few got out, but most of them just.
Sean, was there anything you learned from this blog post and other people's feedback? I mean, this was you wrote this last year, right? November 2024, right? So it's now July 2025. There was a bunch of conversation about it. People talked about it. People probably said, "Oh, I disagree with this," or "I think this is more important." What did you learn?
Oh man, this is going to sound really egotistical, but I think I just believe more strongly that I was right now than I did when I wrote it. I've written a lot of blog posts where I got feedback and I felt, yeah, you're right, I missed that. It happens a lot. I write a lot of stuff that I like go back on. But certainly about like my own experience, I'm really confident on this stuff. One thing I did learn, I guess, was, and I sort of knew this in the abstract, but it really brought home reading the feedback of like how different situations are in tech and different jobs are in tech. And so many people who wrote in the Hacker News comments or emailed me being like, hey, this part really speaks to me, but these other parts could not be less relevant to me for these reasons. And I'm like, yeah, fair enough. Yeah, it's not.
I think that's the jarring part about being an engineer. It doesn't matter how long you've been an engineer, from job to job, it can be so drastically different. Like, you know, just with the processes and everything. Do you think that okay, so when you wrote this, it was what, a year ago? Like, do you think that in the times that we're in right now, it's harder to figure out what is the definition of ship because it's harder to figure out what people are expecting of engineers right now and where engineering is going? Like, we've always said that you need to be really technical, and now AI is writing a ton of the code, right? So, like, do you think we need to ask more often? Like, do you think that there is, like, is it going to change what means shipped? And do you think those priorities are changing right now, or?
Yeah, so let me answer without reference to AI first. Do I think it's gotten harder in the times we're in to like figure out what's shipped? No, actually, I think it's gotten easier. I think in some circumstances, I think it's gotten a lot easier. I think in the mid 2010s, in the height of like zero interest rate madness, there were some projects where it was like nobody knew what the point was. It was like purely like to be doing something, or it was like somebody had this idea and then left, and then somebody else picked it up and then left, and then the third person was trying to carry it through without any real sense. There were a lot of situations like that where I think it was really genuinely hard for anybody to figure out what it meant for something to be successful and what it meant for something to ship. And for all that it's like worse to be a dev now than it was then, one thing that I do think is kind of nice is, at least where I've worked, it is pretty clear what companies care about, because now it is like more specifically tied to making money. Whereas previously they had all these other motives that were because money was free, so they were doing all these other kind of things. Now it's like, well, you know, like if I make a change to Copilot and it increases ARR, that's a good thing. Like if I make a change to Copilot and ARR craters, that's probably a bad thing. Like it's much more like tightly connected in that way.
So we went from Vibe projects and Vibe teams and Vibe services to Vibe coding, basically.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah,
you have to laugh or you cry.
Full stack vibes.
I don't think people are vibe coding in big tech companies in production yet. I think they're like They're doing agentic coding and they're doing all kinds of things, but the pure no code vibes, like just interact with the LLM, I don't think that's that widespread yet.
I think people think it is, and they are basing whole models on it. I guess we're gonna see what happens.
Oh, the hype is there for sure.
Yeah, and I can see, I mean, it's hard to distinguish those things, right? When we say that AI is writing a lot of the code versus vibe coding, like people oftentimes think it's the same thing. They often like, oh, well, AI just wrote the code then, right? It was like, well, like, no, like it started writing code just like my tab complete used to start writing my code, or my Ruby on Rails generated an entire project structure when I had no idea what it was doing and I just filled in some values, right? Like those sorts of things have always been around, and it's like, yeah, we are still hopefully in the loop of those things.
It's like when we first start programming and people tell you have to only use Vim and you can't use IDEs. And now instead of IDEs, it's like you have to learn how to program without AI first, and then you can use AI. It's just another abstraction.
Are you saying I can stop using Vim?
No, I love Vim. After you write, like, I feel like people just use it because, like, it's like hazing. Like, you've already gone through, like, the hurt and pain of learning it, and then you can't unlearn it because you know you can go do something really quick.
Yeah. Muscle memory. It's a sunk cost fallacy. I've invested so much time in these key bindings that it's just going to stick with me.
I always wonder if that's what it is with Bash, right? Like, is it because Bash is really good for things because it's simple, or it's because we've all just been beaten to death and use it for everything?
It's because it's good. It's because it's good. That's it.
I mean, one reason it's good now is that every LLM knows Bash really, really well. So if you need,
can we talk about that's my favorite part of AI, like
Bash scripts.
Because I hate writing Bash so much. Like, not that it can do all the things because it still gets it wrong sometimes, but it'll get you like some of the way there and help you diagnose some of it.
Like AI is taking away all the artistic jobs, including writing Bash scripts. That's
I just want it to write Bash scripts and regex.
If you need like a one-off script to be like, this API is behaving weirdly, like, can you hit all these endpoints with all this different stuff and like aggregate the data?
Yeah. You
can one-shot that with an LLM, and that actually does save a lot of time.
Yeah.
I do like that.
Fantastic. Sean, where should people find you online?
Yeah. So SeanGoedecke.com. That's Goedecke. It's my last name.
I'll have a link in the show notes.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Or you can find me on LinkedIn, or just email me if you want to chat to me.
Sweet. Are you on Blue Sky at all?
I am on Blue Sky, but I don't post anything.
Okay. We have a running guests of the show list that we add people to. So, but if you're not posting, then that's okay. So, sweet. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show and talking to us all about how to ship things. This is fantastic.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Everyone, thank you for listening to this episode. When is this episode coming out? It's coming out in August. I'm going to be at KCD San Francisco in early September. So if you're listening to this before September, KCD San Francisco, I'll be there. And I'm also going to be at EdgeCase in Amsterdam in September. So if any listeners are around and want to meet up in person, please hit me up on Blue Sky. I'll be at those events. Autumn, are you going anywhere in the near future?
It doesn't look like it. Not right now.
That's fine. It's summer. It's time to not travel some places, but
I don't really want to travel right now.
Yeah, I don't.
Like, I'm good. Like, I'm gonna sit at home and garden and write code.
Yeah, the less I need to get on a plane, the better. But sometimes we're doing it. So yeah. All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening, and we will talk to you again soon. Thank you for listening to this episode of Fork Around and Find Out. If you like this show, please consider sharing it with a friend, a coworker, a family member, or even an enemy. However we get the word out about this show helps it to become sustainable for the long term. If you want to sponsor this show, please go to FAFO.FM/sponsor and reach out to us there about what you're interested in sponsoring and how we can help. We hope your systems stay available and your pagers stay quiet. We'll see you again next time.